always knew I wanted to give back. I just didn't really know how or what that would look like. And I came back from my junior year abroad. And ironically, even though I run a career center now, I remember my goal that year was to not have a resume and not have a suit. It was so funny that I didn't want to buy a suit. And whenever I didn't know what I was going to do, I was really lost and confused. And Bill Clinton came to Rutgers, my undergrad, March 1st, 1993. I have a picture of me standing in line. It was a gray day because Rutgers was known for its volunteerism and community service to unveil AmeriCorps. And I was in that huge gym, and that was the moment. And when he talked about it, I was like, this is what I want to do. You know, it was a nonprofit where, like a lot of nonprofits, was missing a lot of stability, a lot of structure. When I first was going there, I remember I was helping develop a mentor program. I was developing some other community sustainable systems, working, kind of sustainability. And I was also job shadowing the person that was running the computer center. And I think I was maybe 3-4 weeks in and showed up and this was, again, 1994 is very early computers, right?
Yeah.
Walked in one day and his office had been cleared out. He quit overnight.
Oh my gosh.
So I was what is it? National service, you get things done.
The AmeriCorps Connections podcast, the unofficial hub for AmeriCorps and National Service alum who are still showing up long after their service term is finished. If you've ever served or know someone who has, then you are in the right place. But I want to get serious. We're in some unprecedented times for our country and for the legacy of AmeriCorps. But if you are a fan of the content of this podcast, then we need you to speak up and speak out. Please consider contacting your member of Congress by using the Voices for National Service tool, which is going to be linked in the show notes. AmeriCorps is an investment we want to support. Please reach out to your congressperson and let them know that this evidence-based and evaluated program shows a return of $34 for every federal dollar invested. AmeriCorps is one of the most cost-effective investments our country can make in education, disaster response, in health and environmental stewardship, and so much more. Plus, as you know from listening to this podcast, the AmeriCorps, the alum, we go on from this program, more than 1.3 million of us, we go on to be leaders, teachers, public servants, business owners, doctors, and so much more. If you listen to this content and you found it valuable, please consider using the tool in the show notes, reaching out to your congressperson and letting them know you are either an alum yourself or you are a friend of AmeriCorps and you believe that you want this program to be invested in. Now we're going to move on to our next episode. And again, if you are a fan of this, please subscribe if you're on YouTube and share this podcast far and wide. Even share it with your member of Congress. Let's share the stories of AmeriCorps. So thanks for listening and on to our next episode.
Okay. So we're back with another AmeriCorps alum on the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. I am so happy today to be with Denise Fowler. We like to learn about how your journey through your service year and what brought you to service. So let's just start right there. How did you learn? You served as a VISTA. How did you learn about that opportunity and why did you want to do this crazy thing?
Yeah. So I did my junior year abroad in college. I was a very confused college student. It was all over the place. My junior year abroad really transformed the way I was thinking. And, I always knew I wanted to give back. I just didn't really know how or what that would look like. And I came back from my junior year abroad. And ironically, even though I run a career center now, I remember my goal that year was to not have a resume and not have a suit. It was so funny that I didn't want to buy a suit. And whenever I didn't know what I was going to do, I was really lost and confused. And Bill Clinton came to Rutgers, my undergrad, March 1st, 1993. I have a picture of me standing in line. It was a gray day because Rutgers was known for its volunteerism and community service to unveil AmeriCorps. And I was in that huge gym, and that was the moment. And when he talked about it, I was like, this is what I want to do with after graduation. So AmeriCorps was still just getting its footing at that point. So I was applying to all those programs, and this was, 1993. This was pre-internet days, and I didn't even touch a computer in college, so everything was paper. And I don't even remember how I learned about all the different programs. And I had been studying a lot in college about the Native American communities and really wanted to go work on a reservation and was looking for opportunities and had drew me more towards the VISTA side than the AmeriCorps side. 'Cause now I think there's much more similarity, but VISTA was much more about standing up the programs and
Yeah.
sustainability versus the direct service. And I remember somebody in the VISTA office was saying to me, because I wanted to go to work I wanted to go out west. I was living on the East Coast. And they said, the Native Americans, there's no opportunities on the reservations now. The community is just really tough there. Everybody's coming into the city. There's an opportunity at the Denver Indian Center. And I interviewed and got accepted to start I can't remember if I started in January or February of 1994. We were the first group of AmeriCorps VISTAs that became like AmeriCorps, like one of the first ones. I had to work like an extra 3 weeks to be in the system to get the education award. We were the first groups of VISTAs to get an education award. So they flew me out to Denver, and we did my pre-service orientation out there a year after.
That's so wild. It's really neat to learn that you can take a service year and you can travel to a different part of the country. And it's not just NCCC, but it's Vista opportunities and also state and national uh, the more AmeriCorps or just the AmeriCorps direct service, as you mentioned, and that you can take a leap of faith and try, hang out on the other part of the country, get to know, the country. So what were you doing during that Vista project?
You know, I was working in a lot of different capacities. I mean, it actually, and one of the questions you asked me is like how it shaped the way that I
Yeah.
and it was a nonprofit where, like a lot of nonprofits, was missing a lot of stability, a lot of structure. When I first was going there, I remember I was helping develop a mentor program. I was developing some other community sustainable systems, working, kind of sustainability. And I was also job shadowing the person that was running the computer center. And I think I was maybe 3, 4 weeks in and showed up and this was, again, 1994 is very early computers, right?
Yeah.
Walked in one day and his office had been cleared out. He quit overnight.
Oh my gosh.
So I was 22 years old and I was basically taking and not really had done anything with computers, like running computer literacy. And, there was a whole GED program there. And even though it was the Denver Indian Center, it wasn't just serving the Native American community. It was serving, the way that the funding was, it was serving anybody in the community that needed it. So, I mean, I was taking that over. Yeah. So it was a little
Wow.
more direct service than you ordinarily from a VISTA standpoint. There was a need, and I
Yes.
did to do the need. So I did a lot with that. I did a lot with the mentoring program, which was really amazing. People, once they got their GEDs, we were trying to help them figure out what could be next. I still remember, it's funny just talking about this stuff. One of the women, early 20s, she had several children, hadn't finished high school. She had gotten her GED and she was our graduation speaker. And I remember standing next to her mom, tears running down her face. Like, it was amazing. And this was also a student when I was running the mentoring program. I had set her up, she thought she wanted to be a dental hygienist. And I'd set her up and job shadowed, right? What does that actually mean? She came back to me after that day, and this is before she graduated, and she's like, I didn't realize I'd be spending my day in someone that's meth. And it was like, I think she thought she'd be like Pat. So I remember we had her job shadow someone as a paralegal, and she was going to be, after getting her GED, starting the community college in a paralegal program. So even though I think I was doing a lot more direct service than I would have liked in terms of less about the sustainability of developing a program, getting funding and structures, I did some of it. The nature of the nonprofit was, and what is it? National service, you get things done.
Yeah, I was going to say you have to find a way to get things done. And if that means you have to do some direct service, and for whatever reason, there's always there's always a reason for the synchronicity that we have to be doing something in a particular time. There's a reason why you were helping place
Yeah.
that that young girl at that time. Your influence somehow needed to be in her life at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so you helped folks figure out what their next steps were. And that's funny because
I never really thought about it. You just said that. I was doing that early on. Yeah. And I ended up in curriculum about a decade in service in nonprofits before I ended up here. But you're right. Even then, I always enjoyed being like, I always say my heart is always about helping, inspiring people to see their potential. And for a decade, it was more in the community and doing direct
Yeah.
service in communities or nonprofits, and now in a different capacity. But yeah, in that stage, you learn a lot. I think, and I'm sure it's one of the reasons I love national services, as an early 20-something, idealistic. You study this stuff in school, and then you go work in a community and you work with people. I still remember I made $293.16 every 2 weeks. But I remember people in the community were making that money and supporting families, right?
Yeah.
So, in a way, doing a year of service is just bursting bubbles, opening eyes to the reality of what you read is so theoretical about what it's like. And then when you're in these communities, to understand the real life challenges that people are facing.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that question. One of the pre-questions that I had sent over, service term can be so transformational. And it's like you just don't know what you don't know until you realize that you didn't know it. And then you can't unsee it and you can't unknow it, right? And do, can you reflect on a time where during your service year, you kind of went, oh, that's really broken, or, oh, we can, this is really challenging, or helped somebody through something that changed the way that you saw things after that moment?
It's interesting. It was probably my first week. I still remember this, and it's just crazy. This is like 30 years ago. We were about to go into a staff meeting, and so the center, which again really kind of formed a lot of things for me, provided multi services. There was a food pantry, there was adult education, computer literacy. I can't remember everything else, but it was trying to provide, a continuum of services. That holistic wraparound, which we don't see enough of, right?
Right.
And we were about to go into staff meeting, and somebody walked in and said to the executive director, the person was not violent, didn't have a gun or anything, but said, I need someone to help me now before I kill or rob somebody to put food on the table for my family.
What?
And I can still see this person's face in saying that. And you just understand, even particularly now as a wife and a mom, like what you do for your family, what you do to protect your family, what you will go to. And here is somebody who did want to clearly resort to violence, but didn't have the money to put food on the table for his family.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
It just, through my year there, like I did a big project where I did the huge Christmas thing where we got all the toys for kids and gave them out. And that was lovely. And it was to see the kids lit up. But you bottom line it for these parents that
Yeah.
it's about, do I have electricity? And what is the basic needs? And so many people in our country do not have their base, that scarcity. It's a wonderful book about that called Scarcity, but and I actually remember years later reading another book that reminds me of the same thing, the book Working Poor, about people working really hard. And you just, with the cost of food, the cost of rent, and what they're making hourly, you just can't make ends meet. And I remember that moment. That really solidified thinking about how do you make systemic change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was serving in Governor Hogan's office in constituent services, and constituent services is where everybody calls when they can't like they need help, right? A lot of them are just trying to get on SNAP benefits, or they're trying to keep their electricity on. And the last resort, I didn't know people did this, but they reach out to the governor and they ask for help. And there's people there in constituent services that are able to to link you to services. Governor Hogan didn't jump on the call often to help,
Yeah.
but we were all trained to be able to reach out to, Health and Human Services or whatever, and link them up with some type of energy support or electric. But that's when I really, it was after my service year, but I was like, holy crap, like this is a really difficult system for people to work through when they don't have resources. And these resources are open from 9 to 5, right? Or 8 to 4. So when these people work or they work overnight and then they have to stand. Yeah. So I can imagine as a young 20-year-old being shown this reality had to have been kind of disorienting. And then like,
A good way to
where do
put
you
it.
go from there? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's sometimes hard when you're doing service, particularly, it's one of the reasons I like, since I did it and the program that I ended up running in Maine on my late 20s, there was a cohort, and that
Mhm.
was actually also a VISTA program, but it was very rare to have a cohort for VISTA, is usually VISTA. And I had started with 3 people and the other 2 guys went to a different site. They couldn't handle, they actually moved to a different location. So there was nobody to really support you. You're processing this and there's nobody there to help you make sense of it. I mean, there was pre-service orientation and then early service, but you're really, for the most part, you're navigating this on your own. And it's one of the things that I remember learning from this, because I think at that point I was really thinking if I wanted to do more direct service, get a master's in social work, I would have nightmares about the people that were in our program, that would like you'd be working with them and then all of a sudden they don't show up for weeks at a time. And it was that awareness that I could not do that work. I was just
Yeah.
it just hit my heart so hard. And that was when I was trying to think about, okay, how can I navigate and do this work in a way that makes sense? And how can I make that change?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else during your service year do you want to make sure that we look at and we examine and highlight? Were there anybody during your service year that really helped you get through some of this stuff, or like mentors?
Again, I worked with the Native American community. I had an amazing professor, Calvin Martin, in college at Rutgers, who taught us all about Native American communities. And I took a lot of these classes. I was very fascinated with um, their community. And actually, it's funny to think about this, is one of the women I worked with was a descendant of Black Elk. And I remember reading Black Elk Speaks when I was in college. I would say, and this is just a really wonderful I'm so glad, Nikki, you invited me to be on this, because I haven't really reflected and thought about a lot of this. There was a couple teachers there, but it was the community. I remember the first time I was invited, we would go to the powwows and I was invited to, I don't remember what it was, but before a powwow, people would eat together. And I was invited to join a family and do that. And the strength of particularly, there was a lot of different, it was a very strong Latino community and Native American community, but in particular the Native American community, because it was the Denver Indian Center, really had a strong presence. I think the way that they gave me perspective from a larger sense and just a grounding, the way that they, there's both the contrast of like the survival, the day to day, but the people who worked there, almost everybody was Native American.
Mhm.
And, and the perspective they gave me about how to approach doing this work, how to approach working with populations that maybe don't have all the resources.
Mhm.
It's one of the things that I remember years later we talked about, and you never use the word like empower community, right? Like that implies that they don't have power and their power is in a different way. So understanding how to listen. You're 22 years old. You don't know anything yet, in my view. You think you know so much, but the best thing to do is just to listen and learn, particularly from the teachers who work there. There were some extraordinary teachers. So both being able to learn from them, but just the joy in getting to see the culture and the richness and the beauty of that. I think that's probably because I didn't have other people to talk about it that helped me process that and to understand at least as much as I could. I was always going to be an outsider, to
Mhm.
just get a glimpse of people who grew up differently than I do, and being able to understand that in a way that was very real and very authentic, and being able to be let into those lives and be able to just be a part of that community for a little bit was really an extraordinary gift.
That makes a lot of sense to be part of I like how you said to be part of a community was just so different from what you had experienced, and to be trusted and brought in and be able
Mhm.
to see those interactions. And I can imagine that the family bonds were very strong and the wisdom was probably amazing. And the energy in and of itself is just, I'm a super fan of Indigenous people. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think they might have a lot of answers for us if we like ask for
Listen.
some elder wisdom, please.
I know. That's a beautiful way, the respect of the elders and the children. I think, speaking of that just reminds me, it's such a sense of community. Like you have the elders with the great, great, great grandchildren, and then the cousins and the people you call cousins, and it's everybody together.
Yeah.
There's just a sense of people. There's a network, there's a fiber that
Mhm.
I think a lot of America has lost. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about that intergenerational
Mm.
experience because I grew up and my great grandmother lived with my grandmother. So she was always around whenever I was at my grandmother's house. So I would have myself, my siblings, my cousins, my grandmother, and her mother. And like she would tell me little stories. She would sing songs, this bluebird song, bluebird, bluebird, sitting in the
Oh,
window, and we I don't know, I feel like we kind of lose that like generational thing where people get shipped off to other places. But how lovely that you had that experience,
yeah.
and being able to actually be like Ram Dass, be here now when you're like 20, early 20s, to
Yeah.
let it sink in, I think is an indication of the person that you are and the person that this experience helped you to become, because you have to accept that as well without judgment or fear or anything. It's like, wow, I just want to learn from this community. And then you're able to serve them,
Yeah.
serve in your service better
Yeah. Yeah.
with
That's
them,
a good way to put it. Yeah.
serve with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my cat just jumped down and scared me because I didn't know she was in here. And she's
I
big.
think, oh,
Oh, yeah. So did you do a year then for service? And
I
then,
did a year. Yeah. I did a year. While I was doing my service year, again, probably the connection to the land. I was volunteering at a state park there and decided after that, I spent a couple years and went from there actually up to the middle of nowhere, Montana, to teach environmental education. Yeah, no electricity, no telephone, like middle of nowhere in right outside of Glacier National Park. But I think it was that connection, again, very much the Native American culture, the connection to the land. And I spent a couple of years from there doing a lot of work, doing environmental education all over the country. I was there for about 7 months.
okay.
Yeah, and again, literally middle, I mean, North Fork Road, for the Glacier Institute in Montana. We had a Ford engine we turned on for electricity. We had a radio phone. This was pre-cell phone days in the middle of the woods, teaching every day. It was there that I realized I wanted to come back east. And so I spent a little bit of period after that. I taught for the Fresh Air Fund in New York State and I taught at Acadia National Park environmental education. But it was interesting because it was actually kind of going back into my service experience when I was working in for the Fresh Air Fund. I had some kids, and it was with boys 12 to 15 years from New York City. They would spend 2 weeks at this camp, and I had a group who couldn't stop throwing frogs against the trees.
Wait, they were
Breaking my
throwing
heart.
frogs against the trees.
Teenage boys throwing frogs against the trees. I was teaching environmental education, and I realized that, kind of went back to my roots of national service and youth development, that I was like, they can't respect the frogs because of most of these kids are coming from really tough homes.
Yeah.
If I want to change the environment, I have to, you clean a river, and unfortunately, it's going to probably get polluted into a different river, right? But you change the life of an individual. And it was from that moment that I realized I wanted to pivot back into nonprofit work. And I pivoted back from there into going to graduate school up in Maine to do. And actually, that's when when I was a graduate student, I was getting to work on another national service program with mentoring. in Maine. So it started to come back to my roots. I had that aha, and I wouldn't have known it, right? And that's one of the things that I love about national service, and I love about my work at the Trachtenberg schools. I always say to people, particularly in the 20s, there's so many things that you don't know you're going to be great at yet. And there's so many things you don't know what's going to matter to you. Like I didn't know I was going to have that aha when the kids were throwing the frogs against the trees. Like you have these ahas in your 20s if you're open to it. And National Service AmeriCorps just allows you this space to do that, whether it's before college or after college, to do that. It's extraordinary. So yeah, so from there I went back to graduate school.
I wanted to just double click on the throwing the frogs against the trees, and then you realizing this is an upstream problem, right? Like the throwing the frogs against the trees is a downstream effect of something that is not working so well upstream. And to solve the issue, not solve the issue, but to address the issue of we need to respect these creatures. We need to, this isn't even, I would should on people right now, right? You should respect, like, and we can't even say nature like it's out there because we are part of it as well. We're made of the same stuff. We also are there. And if we're not respecting it because of certain issues in our life, let's go ahead and address these. And then sometimes I bet you, I don't know if this happened to you, but sometimes in my environmental programs, because I also did environmental education when I was in my service year and then a little bit after. And I realized that people sometimes working in the environment, it was so healing to them. Like I remember this guy coming in and doing a service project, and he clearly was doing community service. Like he, I don't know, got caught shoplifting or something like that, whatever. And his grandmother dropped him off for a project, and he came in and his hair was down and his, he had a hoodie on, and he was like, he didn't want to be there. By the end of the project, he was the last person that left. His hair was up in a ponytail, and he was like, Miss Fiacco, if you ever need anything, please let me know. He was talking to the volunteers, but he was doing manual labor out in the environment, out in a park, and it changed him. So I don't know if you had any of those experiences.
I can't even tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
and particularly with the Fresh Air Fund with these kids. I mean, I remember, one time these tough kids would pause. We're so quiet and we saw a deer. Another kid, I remember distinctly, grabbed me to drag me halfway across the camp to pick up a rock to see swarming ants. Right? Like
Wow.
the experiences. And again, 12 to 15 is a tough age. And at this moment, I still remember this, and I'm like, I still can't believe this happened. There was one of the encampments. It must have rained the entire time. We had very little indoor space, so I had given up with stuff to do. And finally, like one of my favorite books is The Lorax, and I was like to this group of the kids for one of the campus, and these are teenage boys, and I said, I'm going to read the book The Lorax to you. So they were getting settled in my little cabin. It's raining outside, and this kid, and I still remember, he was a tough kid, comes over to me, whispers in my ears, probably 12, 13, and said, can you do it with voices?
Oh my God.
I still get choked up just telling that story. Like I could still remember him doing that. Like this tough kid underneath, he just wanted to hear the story of the Lorax with the voices.
Mm-hmm.
So it was getting them out into the woods. The first day they would come to camp, I always had them do a blindfolded walk. And
Oh, wow.
you hear kids who grown up in New York City where it is tough, and they would be terrified to walk from tree to tree, but to slow them down and to get back in touch with nature.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So it seems like you just had a natural trajectory into, well, it wasn't natural, right? We talked about this when we were talking before. It was, oh wait, this is what I'm doing now. Talk a little bit about the, because you also were program director for a couple of VISTA programs, right?
Yep.
Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that experience. And I'm wondering, when you were explaining that during your service year, you didn't have a cohort and you felt like you didn't really have anywhere to go, did that impact the way that you ran your VISTA project or program?
Did. I mean, so I was involved in several different national service programs. I think one of the most consequential was the one that I got to do when I was in grad school. And it was funny. I actually didn't want a job after grad school. seemed to have this theme when I'm in school. I actually really wanted to travel around Asia, but I still remember where I was doing my graduate assistantship, where I was working on some type of a national service program with the main mentoring. He said, "We don't go anywhere. I've got someone I want you to meet, and there's a job for you." It's like in February. And the Communities for Children, which was then the Governor Angus King, who's now the senator in Maine, was doing an amazing Communities for Children program that was trying to address prevention programs instead of intervention for kids. Very, very deliberate. They were working with communities throughout Maine. They had gotten a grant to place, it was about somewhere between 30 to 35 members statewide, either one or two in each site, all over, working with different, doing community children's cabinets we were building. And the boss that was there, Susan Savell, an extraordinary individual, was coalescing this organization. And so I got to come into that and recruit national service members, work with them with each of the programs, train, because again, having that cohort. So for me, it was a combination of then having a me, which I didn't have, right? When you set up a cohort of 30 to 35, where they could come and talk to me about, both their challenges and just navigating that stage of their lives, but like, how do you build community? How do you get people on board when you're trying to write a grant to do a teen center? I remember one of my VISTA members wrote a Johnson & Johnson grant to get a dental clinic in a rural area in Maine that had no access to this. So it was really great. We met very frequently. This was the stage where there was a little bit more funding for some travel. Still, I'm a national service member, always did things inexpensively and did a lot of trainings in pro bono. But just to really help them understand community and their role in it, and then to lean on each other a lot. It really defined. It was an amazing opportunity. And it was talk about a collaboration, and where I think national service is really extraordinary. It was a collaboration from the federal office, the state of Maine, and it was through the University of Southern Maine. So it was a really leveraged so many resources. Yeah, it was an amazing experience.
It's also really important for the member when you have so many different stakeholders involved, because as an AmeriCorps member, for me, that's when I really started understanding the importance of connections. That's why this podcast is called the AmeriCorps Connections Podcast. Because you realize, like, that's when I realized, oh, like, I need people to know. And I made this up. I think I made this up. It's not, maybe I didn't. Okay, I didn't make it up. But it's not necessarily that people need to know you. It's that they need to know what you know.
Yeah.
For them to be able to, for them to be kind of a part of your social capital sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think, like, I supervise AmeriCorps. I supervise at AmeriCorps VISTA right now. And I'm always like, I'm going to bring you in on this meeting. If you have capacity to be on this project, you won't really have to do much, but I want people to see your name. I want people to know that the kind of work that you do, and to help people to expand their network. And so when you have a college, the federal government and the AmeriCorps program, all invested in this program, then that member is also invested in, and everybody's kind of trying.
As you talk about that, I think what was also really amazing, so the swearing in, Governor Angus King and his wife hosted, and we did a couple different cohorts every year at the governor's mansion in Maine, and that feeling of this matters.
Yeah.
This matters. It was, how much time did it take for them to do that? Not much time at all. But it's that connection, I think, that would help the members understand, when you're mired in the community work, which is exhausting and hard and messy, this matters.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking about it. I always say I have a master's in public policy management, which is nice. The same thing students at my school have. I always say one of the best things I learned about doing this work is the word incrementalism. Community change doesn't happen quickly, right? So the work, and I would always talk to my national service members. National service is always about, are you building sustainable systems that can support itself when you leave? And this change is incremental. poverty alleviation, community development, any of this doesn't happen just like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would say the thing with that too is staying focused on the end goal, where you're trying to get, right? I feel like we get pulled in so many directions, especially nowadays, where we're like, where's the wildfires now? But if you're
Yeah.
just uber focused, I love this book. It's called The One Thing, and it's like you can't have more priorities. It's not a priority if there's more than one thing. So what is that one thing? And I love the concept that they start the book out with of what's the one thing, like if you have a checklist of 5 things that you need to do, what's the one thing that you can do to almost eliminate the rest of the things on the checklist or make them automated or make them easier?
Yeah.
And so really thinking about, so focusing on that end goal. And I love that change happens incrementally. We have to stay focused on the change that we want to see, to have.
You know, it also reminds me there's an amazing quote years ago when I was in college. I had the honor of getting to meet Jane Goodall. Incredible. I know. Just absolutely incredible. And I asked her, I said, how do you not, and I've said this to so many people that are national service members and had students and alumni and everything. I said, how do you not get overwhelmed by everything that's wrong in this world? And this is what she said to me. She said, you just need to find your piece of it. And that wisdom, like, what is your piece of it? That's where your strengths with what, because I can't stand when people are like, oh, follow your bliss, I'm like that. It doesn't always work that way. You have to think about what are your strengths? What does the world need? What makes sense for how you want work to fit with your life? What is your piece of it?
Mm-hmm.
And at first, when she said that, I thought she was talking about being peaceful because I've never met anybody who felt more at peace than Jane Goodall when you're in our presence. But I think it's important for national service members, particularly now with everything that's going on. Your and how I ended up in career services is really a reflection of that. Where I was working on a grant that ran out of money, and I was like, okay, my piece was this. How do I shift this to still have that meaning to who I am? It might not look the same way in that job, that service year for them, in that title, in that organization, but how can I continue to do that one thing that's my piece of it?
Yeah, that's super powerful. Speaking of career services, do you want to jump into what you're up to now, Miss Fowler?
Sure. So yeah, again, I feel very, very lucky after working in the field for so long. I was actually previously at the Heller School at Brandeis when I was working on a poverty initiative that ran out of funding. And they said, which actually ties into national service. It's funny. They said, you have to start working on this. We have a job in career services and we don't know much about it. And walk in and here's the person to meet with that's over on the other side over at the school. And I walk in and Tom Broussard said, I know you. Turns out when Colin Powell was rolling out the 5 fundamental resources, America's Promise, we were running a huge event. Tom was the MC. He and I sat next to each other at meetings. So I was there for several years, and we actually helped develop one of the first national service scholarship programs to be able to maximize the funding. And then now I have been for over 13 years, I've been the Director of Career Advancement and Alumni Services at the Trachtenberg School for Public Policy and Public Administration at George Washington University. And it's what I love about this work, what I love about our school is to me, it epitomizes my foundation in service. We have so many national service alumni because these degrees, the MPA and the MPP, they give you the tools to be able to do that one thing, to do the work that you're meant to do and to do it with the capacity to really be a leader. So our school does a lot, like a lot of schools do in terms of national service, in terms of matching the education award. But I think something I love about our school is we live and breathe that concept that I think is like national service, right? We're not a school that's, okay, we're just going to talk theory. We're really a professional practitioner school. And I love when someone comes to my office, a national service alum, and I chose this school because you guys get things done and your alumni are getting things done. You're doing things. It's not, let's just talk theoretically about how to make a difference in the world, how to find your peace in this, and then move forward. As a school, we also have a master's in environmental sustainability policy. Same thing. It's like what elements of this. So it's incredible to be able to work with people every time during information sessions for admissions. Actually, I have one tomorrow. The orientation, I always ask, how many of you are National Service alum?
About how, like, what would you say? How many people? I'm sure somebody always rate.
Oh yeah, there's always
Always
whether it's NCCC, whether it's that with sometimes we have Peace Corps, but it's a lot of National Service alum because this is what you want to be doing, right?
Yeah.
This is what's great with the Education Award is that you're able to utilize it. But I think it's also and it's a population. You get to go to school with these people who all live and breathe the same thing as you. They're all determined to make the world a better place. And world's been very, very tumultuous recently. And I love getting to help people. What I said earlier is to find their purpose, to inspire them to see their potential. And now I get to do it in this way. I get to work with all these people, and it helps keep me so hopeful to see the work that they're doing. Even if someone was doing a year of service that now they're not going to be able to do, you can go to graduate school and get these tools and be like, okay, I can do it in a different capacity. That boss, Tom Broussard from the Heller School used to always say to me, it's getting from here to there where there keeps changing.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what I feel like our school, the Trachtenberg School, is what we're trying to do is we're trying to prepare students for tools, like to have this giant toolbox, no matter how they change, their strengths change, the world change that they're in, they can still be getting things done. They can still be making a difference and figuring out how to get from here to there when the world keeps changing with the right capacity to do.
Yeah. And I can imagine that so many tools in their toolbox, when things do shift, it's like, all right, I was doing this way, but now we need to do it in this way. And that's what I'm assuming that your programs help support. And is that through the curriculum that they receive from the professors?
Yeah, I love our curriculum. We're one of the top rated schools. So it's a very rigorous curriculum, but we're known as being a highly professional school. So our faculty live and breathe this work. They're not going to, again, just talk about this. It's the way that they approach the work. Our master students do a capstone, pro bono consulting project. And it's so many, our alumni get career services for life. So we work closely with our alum. And our alum often will head up these capstone projects and work with their organizations. So people come out of our school and sometimes people come to the school and they're already advanced in their career. So they're using it to either do a career pivot or to do career advancement. But if you're in your earlier 20s with such a specific tool set, like I love when I bring in alumni and I'm like, okay, what skills did you get? And it's always, okay, this type of program evaluation, cost benefit analysis, how to write, how to influence, how to be an advocate. It's extraordinary. So our faculty, we're a really student-centric school. So we give them those practitioner tools with such a professional lens. Almost 100% of our students work or intern while they're in school with us to put this into practice. So it's just a population. Again, it goes back to that national service roots of people who are like, I want to immediately learn and apply and do.
Yeah. It's like, it's like giving them the opportunity, like setting them down and like opening the door and being like, okay, now go.
Yes.
Go.
That's so funny, Nikki. You said that because I was just talking to a colleague the other day, and I was like, I love that. Was actually the metaphor I was saying about our school. And I said, I would love us to be using that visual that we open doors, whether, again, you're in your career and you want to go further, we have a lot of people that have been appointees or executive directors, head of organizations, head of private sector now, which I love. Years ago when I did national service, it was like the sectors were delineated. Now you need to be able to be to be able to be in the private sector, public, nonprofit. And it's that you open these doors. And I've been in this job at the Trachtenberg School for Public Policy and Public Administration for over 13 years. And I'm not even kidding you, where I am never bored of my job.
That's
and
so
every
cool.
day I'm like, okay, how can I do more? How can I We ran a panel last year specifically with our national service alum.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really amazing. I was like, I would love to have our national service alum talk about the impact of their year of service, the impact of our degree, and what this means for them in their careers. Thinking about students who might be looking at our school. So I was inspired by them.
You should have a podcast.
Just kidding. I always joke around with my husband and I say, if I ever would write a book or do a podcast, it would be about career messiness. Because that's when I fell into what I was meant to do 20 years ago. Like my job title before then, and I love telling this story to people. My job title before I got into career service is the best job title I ever had. Project Manager, War on Poverty. But the project was a mess, right? And career path was a mess. When I was 30, I quit my job to teach English in Nepal. Like I have a very crazy career path that led me there, right? That led me to end up. And it was a pivot, right? It was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have that job title anymore because they ran out of funding. But then I fell into what I was meant to do with my life. And that's what I always, particularly when you talk to national service members who are younger, like you have to embrace the mess.
Yeah. And you have to keep, and you have to keep showing up and being there and being present. And like I said, when you're finding connections, it's important for people to see you showing up on the projects, even if they're not your projects. Just always be there. Just always be the one that's providing value. I'm always at anything that I'm involved with. I'm moving plates from one side to the other. I'm finding chairs. I'm just always just so helpful.
No, it's funny. I have that same work ethic. And my father was a scrap dealer, and I grew up working in the scrap business, sorting metal for $1 an hour when I was a kid. And my father, we tease about it, but he said, but look at your work ethic now. I went down there first thing in the morning, 6 o'clock, worked a full day and got dirty, literally. And you get that instilled in you, that's the kind of person you want to be. And I think it's probably listening to you speak is probably why I was drawn to national service, because that's what it is. You're rolling your sleeves up and getting dirty, getting messy, in figuratively and literally in ways that transform your life.
Absolutely. Mic drop. I'm going to give you a mic so you can drop it.
Boom.
Yeah. So you have a lot of, this is a graduate program. So, and you already mentioned that there's some perks for being an AmeriCorps alum, but if there's a current member who's maybe wrapping up their service year or an alum that's not quite sure what they want to do next, what do they need to know about your program to maybe take some next steps in that direction?
I would say we have admissions events all the time if they're interested. I'm actually running an event tomorrow called Ask the Career Director. So on our website, which is if you go to the George Washington University and you look up the Trachtenberg School for Public Policy, Public Administration, there's a tab for admissions. We do coffee with the admissions director. We do every other month, we do a virtual coffee with alumni so they can hear from alumni. We do alumni panels, information sessions. We do tons of different programming. They can reach out to our Associate Director of Admissions, Miss Mindy Galvin. They can reach out to me. My information on the site. I'm happy to answer questions. We're continually connecting prospective students to alumni just on a one-on-one basis to have some honest conversations. We always feel like, I think our school is extraordinary. I truly am proud. I always say the way that our students and alumni lead is from such a place of humility and leadership. I love that. We believe in that, but we want students to choose our school because it's the right fit for them. We're never going to do the hard sell on somebody. We think we're extraordinary. I think our faculty are just the best. It's really, we have a great reputation, and we want students who come to our school to explore us to learn more, to make sure it's the right fit for them. So there's a lot of opportunities on our website on how you can get more information.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I have some of those links in the show notes. Folks can just, as soon as they're done, they can subscribe to the podcast. They can comment about how wonderful this conversation was, and you can like this video, and then you can go to the GW website.
Yeah.
But you gotta do all those things first.
And I so appreciate, Nikki, what you're doing. When we first connected, you're giving we always talk about it, the voice of national service. You're amplifying the AmeriCorps voice. And I've been involved in national service for 20 years. I was a National Service AmeriCorps alum for a long time. There's been a lot of transition. And even more important now,
Yes.
you're putting a megaphone up to something that the impact in community, the ROI and the dollars it serves in communities, it's transformative on so many levels. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so glad that I started before all of this crazy chaos happened with national service, with the cuts and then bringing them back. And then we still haven't received funding for the FY26 service year. So there's still so many things. So I'm happy that I have like perspectives from before that we're not making this up. We're not making up the story of national service because now national service could be cut from our federal government. So it's to me, I love lifting up those voices, and this will be the 86th interview that I have, and they always end up the same. Like the person was transformed. It's led them to be a better leader or better community member, better parent. I swear I remember one of my interviews, they were like, national service made me a better parent, And that's incredible and quite a statement.
And it's inspirational. As I was putting my kids to bed tonight, I said to them, I said, Mommy's got to go. She's got to help talk about work that really means something to the world. And that when you're 5 years old, that's about all my daughters can understand, but they get it. They understand that. And that's on every level.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us. I'm so glad that we met each other. And folks, we were connected on LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn, you should support this podcast. Because I find a lot of alumni through LinkedIn. So thank you again. And thank your daughters and love them up before they go to their kindergarten. Oh my goodness.
I know. Thank you so much, Nikki. This was such a gift to reflect on my year. You don't get to do that often enough.
No, we don't. So thank you so much. And if you've made it this far, you may as well subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a new one that's coming out. And we'll have all the details in the show notes if you're interested in looking into the graduate program. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Continue getting things done, everybody.